Welcome to Mindzilla. I'm Jess.
And I'm Luke, and no, I don't know why I agreed to this either.
Each week, we kick things off by judging and advising strangers on Reddit before tumbling headfirst into conspiracies and interdimensional nonsense.
Jess digs for the truth, I mostly sit here questioning my life choices.
Get bonus episodes every week on Patreon with our tinfoil hat tier, just £3 a month, or go higher to unlock secret perk and early access.
You can also buy us a coffee on PayPal. It's not a cry for help, but it is close.
Catch new episodes every Monday on Spotify and YouTube, audio only.
Okay, today I have a very interesting Am I the Asshole story. You ready?
Yes.
Am I the asshole for moving out at 17 when I was helping provide for my family? Because my brother got my ex-girlfriend pregnant,
Oh my bad.
and my parents are supporting them. I'm 17 and my brother is 16. My now ex is 16 too. I started dating her 2 years ago. When she told me she was pregnant, I knew the kid wasn't mine because we never had sex. But she was so messed up that I didn't say anything to anyone at first because wondered if she might have been. Ah,
Oh.
that wasn't it. She cheated with me, with my brother, and he got her pregnant. I admit I lost my temper and I almost beat the crap out of him when I found out. My grandpa was able to stop me before I did something I'd regret. Not because he's my brother and I love him, that's not it at all. It's because it would have ruined my life. My parents were all over the place, but they said they would stand by my brother and my ex. I told them I hope they knew they were on their own with that and I wasn't supporting it. They looked at me like I had broken their hearts. See, ever since I was 13, I found ways to help out with money because my parents struggled, and as soon as I could get a real job, I did. I was still doing it when all this happened, and my parents didn't want me to stop. I ended up moving in with my grandparents because I couldn't be around them anymore. My parents were upset I was leaving. My grandparents, who never liked my parents relying on me like they did, told them it was tough luck and they should be ashamed of themselves, expecting me to take care of the mess my brother created and help them provide for the rest of our lives. They told my parents it was never my job. My ex tried to reach out, and I told her I didn't want to yell at a pregnant person, so just leave me alone and forget I exist, because I will never have anything to do with her again. My brother tried reaching out too, but I just didn't answer, and I deleted his text and blocked him. I walk away from him at school, and if I see him outside, I walk the other way. I started walking the long way home just to avoid him. My parents expected me to calm down after a month or two. But it's been several months now. I'm almost 18 and the baby will be here soonish. Nothing has changed or will change, and I told them I won't be part of that baby's life or his life ever again. They told me I need to calm down and be rational, that I was always so responsible and good. My grandparents almost lost their minds when they heard that guilt trip and that the implying I wasn't good anymore. I was told by some other family, siblings of one parent, that I should try to be more understanding. That moving out like I did is extreme when I'm still technically a minor. They basically went to bat for my parents because they feel like I was unfair to them when they have to support their kid even if he messed up. Am I the asshole?
No. No, 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 no. I feel so sorry for him. You are 17 and this is going on. Oh my goodness. Like, you have people, like, especially when you are younger, it happens to, like, be that silly and cheat on someone, but even when you are younger, you know that brothers and sisters is no line that you're gonna cross. God damn. This is a doozy.
Now, there's no updates and no comments that I can see.
I I feel for him, but if he's already like working and stuff, he's still at school, just finish school, carry on with your working, living with your grandparents, because obviously you can't go back to that toxic environment and stop helping your parents, of course. It's just honestly, I got no words for this one.
I think it's more the parents rely on their child to make them money.
Yeah, and then when this happens, they literally stay against them pretty much. You know, I've always helped my parents growing up, worked since I was 15, but if I had a brother that, well, a sister that got pregnant with my boyfriend at the time, I don't know how I would feel about that. Bless him.
There's no updates or anything on there, but definitely not the asshole.
No, at all. Did you hear that, Luke? That was the sound of a saucer full of space lizards absolutely eating it on planet Earth.
Either that or your microwave again. I'm still convinced it's secretly a portal to Area 51.
Look, call me tinfoil hat, call me a conspiracy nut, call me mama to check out, even though it kills me inside. But something weird is going on, and it's been happening for decades, even centuries. All around the world, flying objects, mysterious, fast, and usually on fire, keep falling from the sky. And when they crash, people find things. Strange metals, glowing rocks, tiny space trousers, sometimes even bodies.
Let's slow down before we start accusing Elon Musk of running a Martian drag show.
I am serious. From Roswell to Rendlesham, Virginia to Vegas, the Earth seems to be the cosmic version of a banana peel. And aliens, they just keep sleeping.
Or, and I know this is controversial, maybe people just want to believe something big is out there. Because let's face it, it's more exciting to say aliens did it than Steve had misidentified a weather balloon after 3 beers.
You poor, sweet, logic-bound man. Today, look, we are digging into the most infamous alien crash sites the world has ever seen. Well, maybe. From the 1890s cowboys burying Martians to modern military cover-ups that smell suspiciously like reheated lies.
So grab your crash helmets, folks, and your skepticism goggles.
Because we are about to take you on a high-speed, low-altitude journey through the weirdest wrecks in extraterrestrial history.
It's Mindzilla. Alien Crash Sites Part 1 of 3. Brace yourselves, Jess has a map and no chill.
Let's crash this thing, baby! Right. Picture this, look. The year is 1897. The Wild West is still wild, bar fights are settled with mustaches and revolvers, and Aurora, Texas is a sleepy little town just trying to get by. Enter Judge J.S. Proctor, a no-nonsense Civil War vet with a fine windmill, a healthy mustache, and absolutely zero patience for space nonsense.
So basically, the Texan version of your grumpy uncle, but with more facial hair and a wind-powered water pump.
Exactly. Judge Proctor was one of the most respected men in town, but he wasn't an actual judge, more of an honorary title, like calling someone captain just because they own a boat and a deep fryer. But still, the man had status.
And I assume his biggest worry at the time was keeping his livestock alive and not getting snake bitten.
Until one morning, April 17th, 1897, when that peace was shattered by what the local newspaper called a mysterious airship. No blimp, no kite, but a flaming metal contraption the size of a small barn, hissing and groaning like a drunk steam engine.
Let me guess, it hits the one thing in town that isn't a cactus.
Boom! Straight into Judge Proctor's windmill. Takes out his water tank too. The whole thing explodes in a ball of fire, flings wreckage everywhere. And here's the kicker. Inside the rubble, they find the pilot.
Now here where it starts to sound like a fever dream.
Oh, but what a dream! The pilot was reportedly not of this world, small, fragile, and dressed in strange materials that look like fine silk mixed with metal. And what do the good people of Aurora do? They gather, say prayer, and bury the poor little fella in a local cemetery, right next to their own dearly departed. Like, yeehaw! Welcome to the heart, buddy!
And this whole story comes from one newspaper article.
The Dallas Morning News. Real paper, real ink, real 19th century spelling mistakes.
Conveniently, no photos, no physical evidence, and plot twist, the gravestone goes missing years later. Some claim it was stolen, others say the government swooped in like vultures at a picnic.
Oh, the man in black were definitely there. I'm telling you, there's a shady warehouse somewhere with Judge Proctor's windmill blade and a mummified alien in a pickle jar.
Or, and hear me out, maybe someone just made it up to put Aurora on the map, like the town was in decline, the railroad skipped them. Nothing says revolutionize like an alien crash tourism boom.
Blasphemy. The truth is out there, probably buried in a shallow grave behind the Baptist church.
All right, folks, if you're ever passing through Aurora, keep an eye out for suspicious mounds, missing windmills, and overly chatty locals with suspiciously large hats.
And pour one out for the fallen alien cowboy, gone but never forgotten. All right, look, we're done our dusty Texas alien funeral. Hats off to the Aurora Martian, but now it's time to go big, like blow up a forest big.
Please tell me this doesn't involve more cows and mysterious cigar-shaped objects.
No cows this time, we're heading to Siberia. 1908. Welcome to the Tunguska event, the biggest unexplained explosion Earth has ever seen without actually leaving a crater.
Oh, that Tunguska, the one that flattened half of Russia and made people think the sky was angry.
Exactly. June 30th, 1908. The sky lights up over the, I'm gonna butcher this, so I'm sorry, but Kamenaya Tunguska River. Fireballs streaks across the heavens, then explodes in midair with a force of 10 to 40 megatons of TNT. That's up to 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. It flattened 80 million trees across more than 2,000 square kilometers. It's like Mother Nature rage quit a Minecraft server.
And the best part, no crater, just trees pancaked outwards like some cosmic domino set.
Right? No impact site, no obvious debris, no witnesses close enough to see what really fell, just stories of shaking ground, broken windows, and one poor reindeer herder allegedly being launched off his porch like a Soviet lawn dart.
So what do we think it was? Mainstream science says what?
Officially, meteoric airburst, probably a stony asteroid about 50 to 60 meters wide, coming in hot at Mach 80 that exploded 5 to 10 kilometers above ground. Boom. No crater, but all the chaos.
Okay, but if that's the case, why is Tunguska in the alien files?
Because the theories are chef's kiss level weird. In 1946, Soviet engineer Alexander Kazaksev suggested that it was a nuclear-powered alien spacecraft that either self-destructed or collided with something, as they do.
Sure, because nothing says soft landing like vaporizing a forest the size of Luxembourg.
There's more. In 2004, a Russian research team claimed they found quartz slabs with strange symbols of an unknown alloy at the site, possibly alien tech. No peer-reviewed paper, obviously, but very exciting for folks with telescope and trust issues.
Has been chilling in the permafrost ever since.
Yep. Some folks even think the explosion was intentional, like the aliens sacrificed their ship to save Earth from a bigger incoming asteroid, a cosmic act of heroism, space Jesus moment.
Or just a very unlucky alien trying to take a shortcut over Siberia and failing their intergalactic driving test.
In any case, it's still a mystery. It's the biggest non-nuclear explosion on Earth, and we're still piecing it together over a century later.
So we've gone from cowboy coffins to cosmic boom. What's next?
Next stop, Spitzenbergen, 1927, where things crash, freeze, and allegedly have 7 tiny alien passengers on board.
Sounds cold and suspicious. I'm in.
All right, look, pack your parka and the best thermals. We're heading north, way north. Welcome to Spitzenbergen Island, part of Norway's Svalbard archipelago, where in 1927 a bunch of Norwegians supposedly stumbled upon a saucer that was very much out of place.
So let me get this straight. Middle of the Arctic, 1920s, no Instagram, no reliable phones, and suddenly, boom, crashed alien spacecraft on the ice.
That's the story. According to the tale, a group of Swedish and Norwegian explorers, or possibly Russian Arctic researchers, depending on which version you read, after too much coffee, came across a strange metallic object in the snow. Smooth, disc shaped, full of weird writing, and not of this earth.
And what do they do with it? Take selfies and post it to ye old Facebook?
No, look, they did what any rational frostbite Scandinavian would do. They told a German newspaper. That's where the story first probably surfaced. In 1952 article in Der Flagge, a German aviation mag. The piece claimed that Spitzenbergen crash actually happened 25 years earlier in 1927 and that it was a full-blown extraterrestrial aircraft.
Okay, hold up. We're getting this information decades after the supposed crash and from a Cold War era aviation rag.
That's what makes it so juicy. The article described the object as a perfectly round disk, 15 meters in diameter, made of an unknown super strong metal with weird hieroglyphics carved into its interior. And here's the kicker: 7 alien bodies allegedly recovered.
7. Very specific. Not 6, not 8, 7 space lads just frozen stiff and waiting for the 6 o'clock news.
Exactly. Now, skeptics say the story was fabricated, possibly Cold War propaganda to make the Soviets or Americans look like they were covering up alien tech. Some even say it was a recycled hoax that originally came from a Soviet newspaper and was rebranded with a Scandinavian twist.
So it's basically the IKEA version of Roswell.
Yes, and just like IKEA furniture, nobody can find all the original parts. There is no physical evidence, no photos, just a string of articles, some wild retellings, and a whole lot of trust me bro energy.
And let's not forget, Spitzenbergen was also a hub for military weather stations, mining, and polar exploration, which means there were plenty of chances for people to see unusual tech, balloons, aircraft debris, or even secret early prototypes.
Sure, because the early 20th century Norway was just bursting with futuristic overdisks.
More likely, someone saw a crashed plane, added a bit of vodka, and woke up remembering it as a flying saucer.
Either that or they walk in to a full-blown alien disco and decided the world wasn't ready.
So, what are we saying here? Is this just a Cold War ghost story, a retro sci fi fever dream?
Or a real alien incident that got buried under ice, secrecy, and a terrible journalism. The truth is lost, or possibly buried 15 feet of snow and polar bear named Bjorn.
Either way, if you're planning a trip to Spitzenbergen, bring a shovel, a metal detector, and a fluency in Nordic conspiracy.
And maybe a hot thermos. Alien hunting is a chilly business. Right then, moving on. Hold on to your gelato. We're diving into Italy's other dark secret. Forget the mob, forget the mustache. I give you Mussolini UFO crash.
You're telling me fascist Italy had its own Area 51 before America even got in the game?
Oh, yes. Benito himself allegedly got a front row seat to Italy's first alien encounter. The year 1933, the place Magenta, just outside Milan. A mysterious aircraft reportedly crash landed or made a forced landing in a field, metallic, bell-shaped, no visible wings or propellers.
So, not your average Fiat.
No. Witness thought it was some kind of advanced spy craft, maybe German, maybe British, But when authorities arrived, they were baffled. So what did Mussolini do? He classified it to top secret and handed it over to his own very UFO task force.
I still can't believe this part. What was it called again?
The RS-33 cabinet. Sounds like a filing system, but no. It was a team of scientists, military brass, and one suspiciously creative member, Guillermo Marconi, the radio genius.
The wireless telegraph guy. They put him in charge of alien tech?
Well, obviously, because if I found space saucer, my first call would be to a poet engineer with a fascination for electromagnetic waves and possibly zero clearance level.
All right, but let's be fair. Marconi was a legit genius, and the fascists were known for keeping secrets. So what did they do with the wreckage?
Allegedly stored in a hangar in Vergiate, not far from Milan. According to leaked documents, telegrams, internal memos, sketches, the craft had no rivets, no seams, had a weird anti-gravity properties also. It just screamed not from around here.
Let me guess. This all came out years later during an accidental government transparency event.
Not quite. The world didn't hear a peep until about 1990s, early 2000s, when Italian UFO researcher Roberto Pinotti got his hands on the documents, supposedly leaked by a whistleblower calling himself Mr. X. Very ominous, very on brand.
So where are these documents now?
Pinotti has them. He's shown them at conferences and even handed some over to the Italian Air Force UFO department. Yes, that's a real thing. And a few have been analyzed, but no smoking ray gun yet.
So what did the skeptics say?
Some say it's Cold War era disinformation. Others think the documents are forgeries, crafted to give Italy a Roswell of its own. But the details spooky. Names, dates, signatures, even telegrams allegedly addressed to Mussolini saying, "Don't talk about the aircraft. It's a state secret."
Still sounds a bit like fan fiction written on pasta-stained parchment.
Fair, but is it true? Then Italy beat the US to alien crash recovery by 14 years. Roswell, who?
So to sum up, Fascist Italy, secret crash, poet-in-chief Marconi leading the UFO cover-up, and the whole thing buried deeper than a truffle in peanut.
Exactly. Bellissimo.
All right, what's next? Back to America, or are there more mystery sources hiding in pre-war Europe?
Let's just say we've got some spicy mid-century crashes coming up. But first, shall we go to Missouri? Look, pop quiz. What happened before Roswell involved a crashed saucer, tiny alien bodies, and a very confused priest?
Your average Saturday night at a Midwest church fair?
Close, but no. We're heading to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Spring 1941, smack dab in the middle of apple pie America. Before Pearl Harbor, before flying saucers became a national hobby, and way before tin hat came in fashionable cuts.
All right, I'm intrigued. What supposedly happened?
Well, the legend has it, a local minister, Reverend William Huffman, gets called out late one night by military officers. They tell him there's been a plane crash outside of town, and they need someone to give last rites.
Because when the Air Force has a plane go down, they call a priest before they call a medic.
Exactly. Totally normal, right? So Rev Huffman shows up, only to find not a burning plane, but a shiny disc-shaped craft, and weird, metallic, and with it, three small alien bodies lying nearby.
What did he do? Baptize them in holy space water?
I mean, according to his granddaughter, Charlotte Mann, he was shocked, said a quick prayer, and kept quiet until decades later when the story started leaking out through his family.
Hang on, granddaughter. So we're dealing with second-hand alien drama.
Yeah, most of what we know comes from her. She said her granddad described big heads, slanted eyes, tiny mouths, and the military quickly swooped in, confiscated everything, and told everyone to shut up. Real Men in Black vibes, but make it 1940s.
any photos.
Allegedly, a local fireman or possibly a photographer is said to have taken pictures before the military arrived. Charlotte claims her family saw one, an alien lying on the ground dead with military men standing around it. But surprise, surprise, the photo vanished. Probably into some Pentagon shoebox marked nope.
So we've got Minister with Morals, mystery photo, military swoop in, and one hell of a do not talk about this ever moment.
That's the story. And what's spooky, if true, is that all went down 6 years before Roswell, which would make this America's first alien crash. At least the first they tried to clean up in a hurry.
Or it was just a weird weather balloon with very small pilots, maybe raccoons in jumpsuits.
Whatever it was, something strange happened this night. The fireman, the priest, the mystery photo, and the fact that it stayed buried for decades until people started poking around, that screams cover up energy to me.
So what's the verdict? Hoax, half truth, or hush hush history?
Bit of column A, bit of column B, no documents, no hard proof, but the story has stuck around for over 80 years, and that counts for something in the land of flying saucers and stubborn granddads.
All right then. From Mussolini's hangar to Missouri's mystery priest, this episode is shaping up like a cosmic greatest hits album.
And we're only getting started. Strap in. We're heading to San Antonio, New Mexico, but not for tacos. This is Trinity Site territory. July 1945, just days after the world's first atomic bomb test, something else came crashing down from the heavens.
Wait, are we talking about aliens arriving before Roswell?
Mate, this could be the OG UFO crash. Long before Roswell, aliens trendy, two kids, Jose Padilla and Jaime Baca, were out looking for a lost cow. As you do, instead, they stumble on a giant avocado-shaped craft, crashed into the desert.
So instead of Bessie the cow, they found the intergalactic guacamole bowl.
Exactly. The kids said the craft was 30 feet long, metallic, and half buried in the ground. And here's where it gets extra spicy. They claimed to see small beings inside, one apparently moving like it was injured.
Hold on, aliens survived the crash?
One did, according to their account. The others not so lucky. Jose said it looked like a praying mantis in a flying suit. And yes, it does get weirder.
Ooh, I'm braced. Hit me.
A few days later, military trucks roll in, fence off the area, and start a full-on retrieval op. They haul the craft away on a flatbed truck covered in tarps, and the kids told to zip it. National security and all that jazz.
And this was just weeks after the Trinity nuclear test, yeah?
That's the kicker. The site was literally next to where they'd just detonate the first nuke. So either the aliens were curious about our explosive tendencies, or they were just flying through the worst neighborhood in the galaxy.
What about proof? Documents, photos, anything that doesn't involve two lads and a cow?
Well, that's where the skeptics start wagging their fingers. For years, it was just an obscure local legend until it resurfaced in the 2000s when Baca and Padilla, now adults, gave interviews. Then in 2021, Jack Vallée, yes, the legendary UFOist from Close Encounters fame, co-wrote a book about it, The Trinity, the best kept secret.
But why did it take 76 years to talk about it?
The kids said they were threatened, told to shut up, and didn't want trouble. And let's be honest, you try telling your mates at school that you found an alien burrito shell in the desert and see how you end up in detention or therapy.
So what does Valet say?
He says timeline adds up. He believes the site was real, the recovery was covered up, and this could be the first contact event. But crucially, there is still no physical evidence, just eyewitness accounts, a few second-hand stories, and the government silence.
Which, in UFO terms, might as well be a signed confession.
Exactly. And if this did happen, it means the first UFO retrieval happened before Roswell, before Kenneth Arnold's sightings, even before the term flying saucer existed. It's like finding out there was a secret Beatles album before Please Please Me.
But with more radiation and fewer screaming fans.
So, to recap, two kids, a drowned craft, tiny aliens, military retrieval, and a suspicious silence spanning decades. Alright, next, to where humans first nuked themselves. Coincidence?
Or maybe Earth just got flagged as do not disturb in the alien version of Google Maps.
Next up, shall we tackle Roswell? The most famous alien crash of all time?
Finally, let's go to the pop star of UFO lore.
Hang on. All right. Before we hit Roswell, like a meteor on a sugar rush, we've got to talk about what was happening right before it. Because trust me, the sky was getting proper crowded.
Let me guess. Birds?
Try flying saucers, May. 1947 is June. America's just had its cornflakes and finished the war. And suddenly, boom, weird stuff across the sky like it's an alien joyride.
You mean the Kenneth Arnold sighting?
Bingo. This bloke, a pilot, an all round normal guy, was flying his tiny plane near Mount Rainier, Washington, when he spots 9 shiny objects darting across the sky at impossible speeds. He said they move like saucers skipping over water, and just like that, flying saucers were born.
So he didn't say they looked like saucers.
No, it was the movement, not the shape. But journalists latched onto the saucer like it was tabloid gold, and the name stuck harder than chewing gum on a hot sidewalk.
So that's where the term came from. Misquote Central.
Exactly. And within days of Arnold sightings, hundreds of reports came flooding in across the US, people seeing discs, lights, silvery crafts zipping about like they were doing loop-de-loops around logic, or just got cocky. 1 week later, boom, Roswell. But that's a whole saga on its own, and we're about to get into it like conspiracy theorists at a garage sale.
But before we do, any other saucy saucer moments before Roswell?
A few scattered newspaper stories from the late 1800s and early 1900s, sure, but the Arnold sightings is what lit the fuse. It went global, the public was primed, the press was frenzied, and then suddenly the breeze on a ranch in New Mexico cue the sci-fi soundtrack.
So the skies were already buzzing. Roswell was just a cherry on top of the alien pie.
Exactly. And now it's time for that cherry to explode. Right, there he is. The Beyonce of UFO crashes, the Elvis of extraterrestrial drama, the crash that defined the genre. Roswell, baby!
Finally, I've had my saucers warmed up for this one.
Let's take it from the top. July 1947. Roswell, New Mexico. A rancher named Mac Brazel finds some weird wreckage on a sheep ranch about 75 miles northwest of Roswell Army Airfield.
Weird how?
Think metallic foil, sticks, rubber strips, and bits of shiny stuff that supposedly wouldn't burn or break. Brazel had no clue what it was, so, like any good cowboy with a mystery on his land, he brings it in. Let's do a timeline breakdown of Roswell. July 2nd, a strange object is seen flying during a thunderstorm. Some say it crashes in a desert near Corona, New Mexico. July 4th, Independence Day, but also boom, local reports hearing an explosion. July 5th and 6th, Mac Brazel finds debris. It's unlike anything he's seen, silvery, lightweight, tough stuff. July 7th, Brazel takes his materials to the sheriff and loops in Roswell Army Airfield. RAAF enter Major Jesse Marcel, intelligence officer. July 8th, RAAF issues a press release. The Army Air Force has recovered a flying disc. And boom, the news go worldwide.
Wait, they actually admitted it.
They did, for one whole day. Then just hours later, the story changed. Military pulls a full U-turn, and the cover-up begins. July 9, new press release. No, it wasn't a flying disc, just a weather balloon. Nothing to see here.
Ah, yes, the classic oops. We thought it was aliens, turns out it was a soggy kite.
Exactly. They even parade Marcel in front of the cameras, holding up a piece of standard weather balloon. But guess what? The debris he originally described, nothing like the one he's now holding.
So was the army just gaslighting the entire planet?
That's the theory. Marcel later said he was ordered to go along with it. Off the record, he insisted the material was not of this earth. So, what was it then? The military eventually dropped the weather balloon line and replaced it with something a bit more fancier. Project Mongol.
Let me guess. Another totally non-suspicious name for something suspicious.
Pretty much. So here's the scoop. Project Mogul was a top secret military program in the mid 1940s. The goal? Detect Soviet nuclear tests using a chain of high altitude balloons rigged with massive plastic balloons, acoustic sensors to pick up infrasonic waves, long cables with reflectors, and recording gear. These balloons flew up to 60,000 feet and were designed to eavesdrop on far off atomic blasts by picking up super low frequency sounds.
Cold War spy balloons with ears. Sounds like a Bond villain idea.
Exactly. It was so classified, even the folks at the Roswell base didn't know what it was. So when one of the balloons crashed, it looked like UFO material to anyone who found it. Weird foils, wires, odd sticks. According to a 1994 Air Force report, the debris Brazil found was from Flight 4 of Project Mogul, which had gone off course.
Okay, but people don't usually freak out over balloon bits.
Right, that's the issue. Critics say that Mogul debris wasn't nearly as exotic as people described. Plus, why the sudden press release about the flying disc, followed by a swift cover up and Marcel being told to pose with props?
Sounds like they were hiding something even if it wasn't it.
Exactly. Some say the military panicked, thinking it might be foreign tech or wanted to keep Mogul under wraps. Others believe Mogul was just a clever smokescreen for something truly unexplainable. The key players in all this were Major Jesse Marceau, intelligence officer with who handled the original wreckage, later became a UFO whistleblower of sorts. Then we have Mac Brazel, the rancher who found the crashed debris, went mysteriously quiet after military involvement. And we have also General Rami, the guy who changed the story to weather balloon and did the infamous photo op. In the 90s, loads of witnesses, including former military, came forward saying that they saw small humanoid bodies being recovered, heads with skin, the works.
Now we've got aliens, not just space aliens.
Allegedly. And the military tried to shut this one down with another explanation. Oh, those weren't aliens. They were crash test dummies used in parachute tests in the 1950s.
But this was 1947.
Exactly, Luke. The math doesn't math. Let's get through the theories. So, theory one, actual UFO crash, bodies and all. Military covered it up to avoid mass panic. Theory two, secret tech. Maybe not aliens, but a prototype aircraft or something nuclear adjacent still needed a cover story. Theory three, balloon truthers. It was really Muggle, but the secrecy and screw ups spiraled into the world's biggest tinfoil legend. Regardless of which theory you believe, Roswell kicked off the modern UFO craze. It was the big bang of alien conspiracies. After that, saucers, abductions, and questionable documentaries galore. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I was so excited with Roswell that I missed Washington. Before Roswell lit up the desert with saucer hype, there was Maury Island, a murky little tale out of Washington state that has everything flying saucers, mysterious goo, a dead dog, and possibly the very first man in black encounter.
Sounds like a conspiracy film noir.
Exactly. Picture it. June 21st, 1947. Puget Sound near Maury Island, which, by the way, isn't even a proper island. It's like a peninsular sidekick to Vashon Island. Well, anyway, a guy named Harold Dahl, harbor patrolman, is out on his boat with his teenage son, his dog, and 2 crewmen. What does he see? 6 flying donut-shaped UFOs in the sky, hovering, circling each other like they're planning brunch.
Donut UFOs. Glazed or jelly food?
Apparently metallic and full of drama. One of them starts to stutter midair like it's having mechanical issues, then bam, it drops molten slag, like hot metallic debris all over the boat. Definitely not. The mystery goo kills the dog, unfortunately, injuries Dal's son, and damages the boat. Naturally, Dal is freaked out and reports it to his boss, Fred Chrisman, who goes to check it out himself and says he sees a flying disc too. Now, here's where it gets extra spicy. The next day, Dal says he's visited by a mysterious man in a dark suit, warns him to keep quiet or else.
Hold up. June 1947. That's before Roswell. So this is the first ever Men in Black sighting.
Yep. This guy takes Dal to a diner and lays it out like something from a mafia flick. What I have said is proof to you that I know a great deal more about this experience of yours than you will want to believe.
That's both cryptic and deeply unsettling.
Exactly. So Dal gets freaked and tries to backpedal, claiming later that it might have been a hoax, but by then the story is out. But here's the twist. Dal and Chrisman sent some of the debris to Ray Palmer, a sci-fi magazine editor. Palmer sends 2 Army Air Force intelligence officers, Lieutenant Brown and Captain Davidson, to investigate. They come, collect the material, and fly out of Tacoma for the next day. But just 20 minutes into the flight, their B-25 bomber crashes and both men die.
That's straight up shady.
It gets weirder. The official story says the plane caught fire and crashed, but the Maury Island debris never recovered, supposedly destroyed in a crash. There's 3 possible theories. Theory 1, real UFO encounter. Dal saw flying saucers, collected debris, and got men in black treatment. Then the military swooped in and covered it all up. Theory 2, elaborate hoax. Dal and Chrisman were trying to sell a sci-fi story for cash or fame, and it spun out of control. Or Theory 3, government experiment gone wrong. The flying objects were classified military craft. The debris was exotic material, and the feds were cleaning up.
Okay, but 2 intel guys die in a plane crash carrying the evidence. That's not a casual plot point.
Right. Even if it was a hoax, the outcome was weirdly tragic. And if it wasn't an hoax, then we've got a full-blown pre-Roswell cover-up.
So the Maury Island incident is like the UFO beta test 1 month before Roswell dropped and made it mainstream.
Exactly. It's got all the elements: UFOs, mystery metals, secretive agents, and the very first sighting of a guy in a black suit telling you to shut your trap. A full-on taster menu for the decades of saucer drama to come. Right. If Roswell was the prom queen of UFO crashes, then Aztec is an enormous, enigmatic cousin who showed up late but bought a whole spaceship with her.
Wait, I thought Aztec was debunked ages ago.
We'll get to that, but first, the story, and it's a doozy. March 1948, Aztec, New Mexico. According to several reports, a giant disc-shaped craft, roughly 100 feet wide, crash lands in the desert near Aztec. A group of oil workers and local rangers allegedly came across the wreckage. They don't just find a busted-up cap, Luke. We are talking a full-on metallic disc saucer classic. And it's intact. No explosion, no fireball, just nestled in the scrubland like it parked there by mistake.
That's the UFO equivalent of soft landing.
It gets better. They say the crash had seamless metal, no visible bolts or rivets. And here comes the kicker. Through the little portholes, witnesses allegedly saw small humanoid bodies slumped over controls inside the craft. According to accounts, the beings inside were about 3 to 4 feet tall, wearing tight-fitting uniforms, no visible injuries, no signs of life. And then bam, imagine, the military shows up. Truck stands full lockdown, they cordon off the site, tell locals to buzz off, and allegedly haul the entire Sosa, bodies and all, out of a flatbed truck, parts unknown.
So basically, oil man sees a UFO, aliens confirmed, military's release of immune system.
That's the narrative. It was first popularized in the early 50s by a guy named Frank Scully, a Hollywood gossip columnist turned UFO writer. He published a book called Behind the Flying Saucers, claiming the Aztec craft was one of multiple alien crashes the government was covering up. And then it got messy.
Let me guess. Fraud, lies, and weirdos.
Bang on. Scully info came from two men, Silas Newton and Leo Barwa, who claim to be scientists with inside knowledge, but it turns out they were con men flogging fake alien technology.
So the Aztec story was just a sci-fi sales pitch.
That was the official line. Newton and Gabawa were exposed in the early 1950s, and Aztec got laughed off as an hoax. But this is where it gets spicy. Decades later, UFO researchers like Scott and Suzanne Ramsey dug into old records, spoke to locals, and unheard new witnesses. They argue that while Newton and Gabawa were shady, the crash story might have been based on real event, and that the conmen hijacked for profit. Now let's summarize it with 3 theories. Theory 1, total hoax. The saucer never existed, just a tall tale from two hucksters with a knack for sci-fi grift. Theory 2. Real crash, real saucer, but Newton Gabawa ruined it by going public and screwing up the credibility. Or Theory 3. Secret tech or classified experiment, the military's fast response and witnesses' intimidation points to something being covered up, even if it wasn't ETs.
So Aztecs a crash that could have been the biggest, but got tangled up in lies and dodgy desert salesmen.
Exactly. It's like the UFO world's lost episode, buried in scandal, but maybe with a kernel of truth under the glitter and grease.
That 100-foot disc, never officially acknowledged, never found, never photographed.
Only in witnesses' accounts, no hard evidence, but you know what they say in UFO lore, the weirder the story, the cleaner the cleanup. Alright, moving on. Strap in, sunscreen up, we're moving on, heading to Death Valley 1949, where a man calling himself Jack Lemon claims to have witnessed one of the most secretive UFO retrievals in US history.
Jack LeMond. Sounds like a jazz saxophonist with a haunted past.
Or maybe a naval intelligence officer turned cosmic whistleblower, which is closer to the truth. So let's explore it. Who was Jack Lemon? According to later accounts, Jack Lemon wasn't just some drifter with a campfire trail. He allegedly served as a U.S. pilot during World War II, later moving into reconnaissance and surveillance work post-war, possibly under an intelligence liaison role connected to early Cold War operations. He went public with his story decades later in the early 1980s under an alias, speaking anonymously at a fringe military veterans event and later featured in underground UFO newsletters and independent interviews.
So, no verified name, no DD214, no documents, just a guy with stories and a smoky voice.
Exactly. His real identity was never confirmed, but he sounded like the real deal. With precise military terminology, knowledge of aircraft recovery procedures, and eerie detail that mirrored later confirmed crash protocols seen in the classified documents. Lamont claimed he was part of a temporary recovery unit attached via the Navy to a joint operation involving army and civilian engineers, supposedly under the umbrella of a classified scientific project based in California. The team was flown into a undisclosed section of Death Valley, where in a disc-shaped metallic craft had crash-landed with minimal exterior damage. The site, he said, was eerie quiet. The object was hot to the touch but otherwise intact, and inside, 3 occupants, alien, humanoid, and according to Le Monde, not of this earth. Once again. It described grayish skin, oversized heads, black eyes, and strange silver suits, like wrinkled foil that moved on its own.
I mean, if he wasn't making it up, 4 marks of detail.
Lamont claimed that after the initial scans with Geiger counters and non-standard scientific gears, the craft was loaded onto a heavily modified flatbed, tarp-sealed, and escorted under military guard to an unnamed research facility, though he heavily hinted that it was near Edwards Air Force Base, or possibly Tonopah test range. He and others were allegedly debriefed, threatened with court-martial, and reassigned. He said nothing publicly for over 30 years, fearing legal action or worse. He claimed several others involved either vanished, died under strange circumstances, or refused to ever speak of it again.
Classic cloak and dagger, but with added aliens.
But was he legit? Proponents said Lamont's knowledge of recovery protocol, military slang, and airy logistics felt too accurate for an hoaxer. Skeptics argued that Lamont was likely a fabricated persona, possibly a composite of character used to lend credibility to an invented crash. Conspiracy theorists, they think Lamont was real, and maybe a test balloon for slow drip disclosure by shadowy insiders. So, was Jack Lamont a real Navy man with a secret, or just a eerie LARPing legend with a flair for the dramatic?
Either way, his tale added one more dusty breadcrumb to the trail of sources and secrets in the post-Roswell years.
Maybe the truth died with Lamont, or maybe it's still parked somewhere in the desert hangar with a do not enter sign and a very twitchy guard.
Either way, if you're ever driving through Death Valley and the sky starts humming, keep the camera ready and your windows up.
All right, my fellow space freaks and gravity deniers, that brings us to the end of part 1 of our Mindzilla deep dive into alien crash sites. We've crossed decades, continents, and more cover-ups than a corrupt janitor at Area 51.
Texas windmills to Soviet ice islands, from shady Navy men in Death Valley to full-on saucy football fields in New Mexico. It's been a ride.
And the madness doesn't stop here. No, 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 it's not even halftime.
Next week, we're back with part 2. Crash Course continues, starting with one of the most underrated, eerie, and well-documented UFO landings in the Midwest, the Delphos, Kansas incident of 1971.
Glowing rings in the dirt, frozen soil, terrified farm boys, and a sheepdog that wanted none of it. You don't want to miss this one.
Plus, we'll hit even more international cases, more declassified bombshells from the 70s and 80s, and yes, the time-traveling aliens, because Jess won't let that one go.
They're coming back to fix their mess, Luke. I'm telling you.
Of course they are.
So until next week, dear listeners, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or Spotify. Stay curious, stay cheeky, and keep your eyes on the skies, because if something crashes in your backyard and men in black show up, call us first.
Or at least hit record on your Nokia.
This has been Mindzilla, the podcast that pokes into the unknown with a big stick and a tinfoil hat.
See you next week for part 2. Crash landings and cosmic chaos continues.
Bye.